The Los Angeles Lakers are about to enter the most critical stretch of the season, and there's a name circulating in NBA circles that could completely transform our defensive identity and finally solve the center position puzzle that's haunted this franchise for years. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report, your ultimate destination for breaking news, insider information, and in-depth analysis on everything Los Angeles Lakers. Today I'm diving into a developing situation that has the potential to reshape our championship aspirations, a move that addresses our biggest weakness, and a player who could be the defensive anchor we've desperately needed since the departure of our championship core. This isn't just about adding another body. This is about fundamentally changing how the Lakers compete on both ends of the floor. The 2024-25 season has been a roller coaster for Lakers Nation. We've seen flashes of brilliance, moments where this team looks like it can compete with anyone in the Western Conference, where LeBron and AD are clicking on all cylinders and the role players are stepping up in big moments. But we've also seen the same frustrating patterns emerge, the same defensive breakdowns in the paint, the same struggles protecting the rim when Anthony Davis isn't on the floor, the same questions about our depth and our ability to sustain excellence over a full playoff series against elite competition. And let me be completely honest with you. The center position has been a massive question mark all season long. We brought in players during the offseason hoping they'd provide stability, hoping they'd give us that presence in the middle that allows AD to play his natural position at the four, hoping they'd be the defensive anchor that keeps our paint protected when our star is resting. But the reality hasn't matched the expectations, and as we approach the trade deadline and start thinking about playoff positioning, the Lakers brass has to be evaluating every possible option to upgrade that spot. This is where things get really interesting, where the conversations happening behind closed doors start to leak out, where teams begin positioning themselves for potential moves that could define their seasons. The NBA is a relationship-driven league, and when you hear about teams making inquiries about certain players repeatedly over extended periods, that tells you something significant. It tells you there's genuine interest, there's a belief that a particular player fits what you're trying to do, and there's a willingness to make something happen when the timing is right. The Utah Jazz have been one of the most interesting teams to watch over the past couple of seasons. They're clearly in rebuild mode, they're accumulating assets, they're developing young talent, and they're not afraid to make moves that prioritize long-term sustainability over short-term success. That's the smart approach for a franchise in their position, but it also means that players who don't fit their timeline, players who might be ready to contribute to winning basketball right now, could potentially become available if the right offer comes along. And there's one player on the Jazz roster in particular who's been generating significant attention from contending teams around the league. A young center who's shown elite defensive potential, who's still on a team-friendly contract, who fits the modern NBA perfectly with his rim protection and rebounding ability, and who might be exactly what a championship-caliber team needs to put them over the top. Multiple teams have been monitoring his situation closely, making inquiries, laying the groundwork for a potential deal, and the Lakers have been right there in the mix. Before I get into the specifics of who we're talking about and why this makes so much sense for Los Angeles, I need you to understand the broader context of the Lakers roster construction challenges. Rob Pelinka and this front office have done an admirable job trying to build a championship-contending roster around LeBron James and Anthony Davis while navigating salary cap constraints, luxury tax implications, and the reality that our championship window is right now. Every decision has to be evaluated through the lens of maximizing this opportunity while LeBron is still playing at an MVP level and AD is in his prime. The center position in today's NBA is completely different from what it was even 5 years ago. You need guys who can protect the rim without getting played off the floor in pick-and-roll coverage, who can switch on to smaller players when necessary, who can rebound at a high level to fuel transition opportunities, and who don't clog the paint offensively so your stars have room to operate. Finding players who check all those boxes is incredibly difficult, and finding them at a price point that makes sense for a team already paying max contracts to two superstars is even harder. The Lakers have cycled through multiple centers over the past few seasons trying to find the right fit. We've brought in veterans, we've tried developing young players, we've experimented with different styles and skill sets, and while we've had some success, we haven't found that perfect solution that allows us to feel completely confident in our front court depth. When AD is on the floor, we're fine. We can compete with anyone. But those minutes when he's resting, those stretches where we need someone else to hold down the paint, that's where we've been vulnerable all season. And this vulnerability has been exploited by the best teams in the league. When we face opponents with dominant big men, when we go up against teams that attack the paint relentlessly, when we're in playoff series where every possession matters and defensive breakdowns get magnified, our lack of elite rim protection behind AD becomes a critical weakness. It's the difference between being a good team and being a championship team, and the front office knows it. So let me tell you about Walker Kessler, because this is the player who could change everything for the Lakers. Kessler was drafted in the first round of the 2022 NBA Draft by the Memphis Grizzlies with the 22nd overall pick before being traded to Minnesota and then ultimately ending up in Utah. From the moment he stepped on an NBA court, he showed something special defensively. His timing as a shot blocker is elite, his rebounding instincts are excellent, and his understanding of defensive positioning is far beyond what you'd expect from a young player. In his rookie season with the Jazz, Kessler immediately established himself as one of the premier rim protectors in the entire league. He averaged 2.3 blocks per game, despite playing just 23, 4 minutes per contest, which extrapolated to per 36-minute numbers that were absolutely elite. His defensive rating was outstanding, his defensive win shares were among the best for rookies, and he quickly became a fan favorite in Utah for his energy and his impact on that end of the floor. But it wasn't just the shot blocking that impressed. Kessler showed he could be a legitimate rebounding presence, averaging 8.4 boards per game as a rookie. He was particularly effective on the defensive glass, which is crucial for teams trying to limit opponents to one shot per possession. His rebounding rate put him in elite company among centers league-wide, and he did it while sharing the court with other big bodies who were also competing for boards. The 2023-24 season was supposed to be Kessler's breakout year, the season where he took another step forward and established himself as one of the league's premier young centers. And in the games he played, he showed exactly that potential. His scoring efficiency was remarkable, shooting over 70% from the field by focusing on high-percentage shots around the rim. His defensive metrics remained elite, and he was developing chemistry with the Jazz's young guards in pick-and-roll situations. But then disaster struck. Kessler suffered a torn labrum in his shoulder that required surgery, cutting his season short after just 5 games. In those 5 games, though, he was producing at an incredibly high level, 14.4 points, 10.8 rebounds, and 3.0 blocks per game. Those are legitimate starting center numbers, the kind of production that contending teams would kill to have, especially when you consider he was doing it efficiently and without needing plays called for him offensively. The injury was devastating for Kessler's development timeline and for the Jazz's evaluation of their young core. But here's the silver lining for teams interested in acquiring him. Injuries happen, players recover, and when they do, they often come back with renewed motivation and hunger to prove themselves. Kessler has been working through his rehabilitation process, he's been getting healthy, and by all accounts, he's on track to return to full strength. For a team like the Lakers who are thinking about the playoff push and beyond, that timeline could work out perfectly. Now, here's where the Lakers connection becomes fascinating. According to multiple reports from credible NBA insiders, the Lakers had significant interest in Kessler before they ultimately decided to bring in DeAndre Ayton this past offseason. The front office was doing their homework, evaluating all the available options at center, and Kessler's name kept coming up in internal discussions. The fit made sense on paper. A young, elite defensive center who could protect the rim, rebound at a high level, and do all the dirty work without needing the ball offensively. The Lakers ultimately went in a different direction, opting for Ayton's more established track record and his ability to contribute on both ends of the floor. But the interest in Kessler never fully disappeared, and now, with the trade deadline approaching and the Lakers still searching for that perfect front-court balance, those conversations could be heating up again. When a team shows interest in a player once, when they do the evaluation work and identify someone as a fit for their system, that interest doesn't just evaporate. It sits there, waiting for the right opportunity to resurface. And here's the crucial piece of information that makes this whole situation so intriguing. The Lakers aren't the only team that's been checking in on Kessler. The Indiana Pacers have reportedly been inquiring about him repeatedly, dating all the way back to last summer. That tells you two things. First, it confirms that Kessler is genuinely available if the right offer comes along, because teams don't keep calling about players who are completely off the table. Second, it means there's competition for his services, which could drive up the price, but also indicates that multiple smart organizations see value in what he brings. The Pacers' interest makes sense from their perspective. They lost Miles Turner to injury and need rim protection to compete in the Eastern Conference. But here's why the Lakers should be even more motivated to make a move. We're not just trying to make the playoffs, we're trying to win a championship. We're not building for 3 years from now, we're trying to maximize this season and next season while LeBron is still at this level. That urgency, that win-now mentality, should make the Lakers more aggressive in pursuing a player like Kessler. Let's talk about fit, because that's what ultimately matters. How would Kessler fit into the Lakers' system, and what would his impact be on both ends of the floor? Defensively, this is where he'd make his biggest impact immediately. The Lakers have struggled with rim protection all season when AD isn't on the floor, and Kessler would solve that problem instantly. His shot-blocking ability would deter opponents from attacking the paint, his rebounding would help us control possessions, and his defensive positioning would allow our perimeter defenders to be more aggressive, knowing they have elite help behind them. Kessler's defensive versatility is underrated too. He's not just a drop coverage big who can only play one style. He's shown the ability to hedge on pick and rolls, to recover back to his man, and to make the right rotations when the defense breaks down. In the Lakers system under Darvin Ham, where we switch and rotate constantly, having a center who understands those concepts and can execute them would be invaluable. It would make our entire defensive scheme more effective and give us more flexibility in how we defend different styles of offense. Offensively, Kessler wouldn't need the ball to be effective, which is perfect for a Lakers team that runs everything through LeBron and AD. He's an elite lob threat, finishing at over 70% from the field by staying in his role and taking high-percentage shots. He sets solid screens that create space for our ball handlers. He crashes the offensive glass to create second-chance opportunities, and he doesn't make mistakes with the ball in his hands. That's exactly what you want from your center when you have two of the best players in the league who need the ball to be effective. The pick-and-roll potential with Kessler and LeBron would be particularly exciting. LeBron has always thrived with athletic big men who can catch lobs and finish above the rim, and Kessler fits that profile perfectly. We've seen LeBron make careers for role-playing centers throughout his time in the league, and Kessler's skill set would mesh beautifully with how LeBron operates in the half-court. Those easy baskets, those momentum-shifting dunks, those would become a regular part of our offensive attack. Now let's address the elephant in the room. What would it take to actually acquire Kessler from the Jazz? This is where things get complicated, because Utah isn't just going to give away a young, talented center on a cheap contract. They're going to want draft capital, They're going to want young players who fit their timeline, and they're going to drive a hard bargain knowing that multiple teams are interested. The Lakers would likely need to part with future first-round picks, which is always a difficult decision for any organization. But here's my perspective on that. When you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis on your roster, when you have a legitimate chance to compete for a championship, you can't be overly precious about draft picks that won't convey for 3 or 4 years. Those picks might turn into good players eventually, or they might not. What we know for certain is that Kessler is already a good player who fills a massive need and makes us better right now. That's the trade-off you have to be willing to make when you're in championship or bust mode. The Lakers would also need to make the money work in any trade scenario, which means including some combination of current roster players to match Kessler's salary. This is where things get tricky, because you don't want to gut your depth to acquire one player, even if that player significantly improves your starting lineup. The front office would need to be creative, would need to find a package that works for both sides, and would need to ensure that we're not creating new holes while filling the one at center. One potential framework could involve some of our younger players who haven't quite found their footing in LA, combined with draft compensation that makes Utah feel like they're getting fair value for a player they've invested in developing. The Jazz are in asset accumulation mode, so they'd likely prioritize picks over win-now players, which could actually work in the Lakers' favor. We have veteran pieces that don't fit Utah's timeline, but we can offer the future draft capital they covet. There's also the question of timing. When would be the ideal moment for the Lakers to make a move like this? The trade deadline is the obvious answer, but there's also the possibility of waiting until the offseason when more options might be available, and we have more time to negotiate. However, I'd argue that if Kessler is available and the price is reasonable, you make the move now. You give yourself the rest of the regular season to integrate him into the system, to build chemistry, to work out any kinks before the playoffs begin. That runway is valuable, and it could be the difference between a first-round exit and a deep playoff run. The other consideration is Kessler's health status. He's recovering from shoulder surgery, which means any team acquiring him needs to be confident in his medical reports and his timeline for return. The Lakers have excellent medical staff and training facilities, so if anyone can help him complete his rehabilitation and return to full strength, it's us. But it's still a factor that would need to be carefully evaluated before pulling the trigger on any deal. That matters for team morale, for buy-in from your stars, for creating a culture where everyone believes we can win it all. Players respond to organizations that show ambition and commitment to excellence. There's also the long-term consideration. Kessler is only 23 years old, which means he's not just a win-now piece. He's someone who could be part of the Lakers' future beyond LeBron's career. We're going to be covering every development, every rumor, every potential move that could impact this team's championship chase. This is the kind of detailed, passionate analysis you won't find anywhere else, so stay locked in with me for all the latest Lakers news. Let's bring banner 18 to Los Angeles.